Hey, John.
Hey, Mike,
Wow.
world champion Mike from Maine.
That's right. Where I am the starting shooting guard of the Boston Celtics.
Oh man, old DJ. You guys called him DJ, Dennis Johnson.
Dennis Johnson.
My whole life, he was a small guy on the screen on my TV, and I ran into him in an airport once, and I was like, and I'm not so short myself, but it's amazing how tall these folks are in real person, huh?
Pepperdine grad.
Pepperdine,
I
huh?
when I had never heard of Pepperdine when I was a kid, and I just thought, I was 8 years old. I thought that was a hilarious college name.
Well, you never watched Battle of the Network Stars, right? On
No.
ABC, which was always filmed at Pepperdine University in Malibu, California. So you saw if you were born in the 70s or a child of the 70s, you would have known. But
I was
you're not a
born in the
child of the
70s, barely.
70s.
Yeah, I was
Barely.
not a child of the 70s, but barely
But
born.
what are you, Mike? What is your identity?
I am a child of the 80s because I was born in 79. Uh, but like the early 90s to mid 90s.
All
That's
right.
my time too. That's my jam.
And you chose your name, your YouTube and Twitter
My
handle.
You
What'd you
know what
call
my name
yourself?
is based on, right? You know what my name is based on.
Probably Foreigner, right?
The Foreigner song.
Yeah.
Jukebox Hero.
You and the other
I just
3 guys
thought,
with that name, yeah.
yeah.
Not an original bone in your body, my friend, I'm sorry.
um
Uh,
so
talk to me
what are
about what you
your
wanna talk about, because here we are.
Yeah. So I acquired a approximately 100,000 card junk wax collection a
Mhm.
month or so ago, 6 weeks ago maybe. And it is 98% junk wax. And so I'm trying to figure out. There you go. You got it.
Came
Yes.
today, man.
John won my giveaway. Good. And if you notice, there's a bonus card in the back too.
I saw that. I might have that, but I'll have to check, yeah.
You mentioned you had 54, and I was like, I'm throwing in maybe this would be 56.
Okay.
Um, so how do you make money from a junk wax collection? And obviously, the easiest way is to get lucky and find something that's incredibly valuable, but that's unlikely. I was hoping maybe I'll find an SP Jeter,
Okay.
but no.
Right.
You have a ton of experience. You do Jeep collection, right? Where you
Jeep
buy a
cards.
collection
Yeah,
Jeep
Jeep cards.
cards. Yeah.
Yeah.
You have a ton of experience, and I thought we could talk through how do you make money off of a junk wax collection? And for me, the guy was just giving it away. He was like, "Come and take my cards." I ended up giving him $100 because I looked at it. I was like, "Okay, this is going to be easier to make money from than I expect. I'll give you $100 right now." Even though he wanted to give it away, I've probably spent 30 to 40 hours on it so far.
Mhm.
I expect to spend another 20 to 30. So you're talking 60, 70 hours on a collection. That's a lot of time. I enjoy it. It's
Mhm.
a blast, and I think you have to. Chris
Right.
Sewell talks a lot about how much he enjoys sorting cards. I'm sitting on my couch. I've got YouTube on. I've got the Celtics game on or had, and I'm sorting cards and organizing cards, and I love it.
I've
But
sorted cards with Chris Sewell in his very basement,
that's right. You have
so I get
the
it.
Grail collection. Yeah.
You have to, first of all, you're talking about a couple different things here, and I wanna back up. Junk wax era, right? I was in the throes of it. I mean, you're younger than I am by 11 years.
I collected
So,
86 to 94.
but with that said, keep in mind that 86 to 94, I was 18 to 26 years old. So I had money in my pocket.
Yeah.
I bought a case of 1988 Donruss. Okay, in
Congrats.
1988. Thank you. And anyway, like I know just as much about junk wax as most people that collected in that era have. I mean, people think I'm a vintage person perhaps or 70s, but I was in the throes of it. I collected before, during, and after. And then when I say after, kind of like when the strike hit in '94, there was an abundance of cards that you could buy on the cheap, and I would do that. I kept buying cards on the cheap, packs, unopened packs and stuff like that. So anyway, it's an era though. Even out of 100,000 cards, you can find some stuff in there, right? You can. It isn't like they're all crap cards. Most of them are, and most of them are in multiplications or multiples that you've never seen before. But with that said, there are a lot of good cards in there. Okay,
Yep.
and I appreciate, there's a lot of beauty in some of those cards because
Hmm.
there's a lot of Score put out a lot of crappy cards when they came out, but as things evolve, card companies got better, as the '90s went on, and you see a lot of the stuff now that is still in use, like Pacific is famous for putting out some stuff that maybe people didn't want, but they are still putting out prisms spelled
Yep.
differently now. They're still putting out numbered cards. They're still putting out autos. They're doing all that stuff. So there's a lot of history in those cards as well, and that should not be overlooked. The era gets a rightfully so. It gets a lot of bad pub, but there was a lot of beauty in that in those cards as well. Are you seeing that in your collection? Are you discovering things that you did not know before?
Yeah. So the collection spans 1980 through 2008,
Mhm.
and I didn't collect. I collected a little bit in '03, '04 into '05, but I didn't collect from '94 to '03 and '05 to 2020. So there's a lot of cards, a lot of sets, a lot of things in there that I had never seen before, uh, that were really fun to see. Some amazing cards, really cool stuff. To make money, to successfully make money, I think if we can both agree, you need to know that era of baseball, right? Before you
Right.
even try to buy a collection. If I were to buy an ultra modern baseball card collection, I would struggle with it so much because I'm not that knowledgeable about today's game of baseball. I know
Right.
enough to be dangerous, but I wouldn't want to buy an ultra modern baseball card collection because I'd be looking up every single guy. Is this guy good? But
Right.
I can take 1,000 cards right now, and it'll take me 40 minutes to zip through and put them all in 8 piles of things I want to do with them. It would take me forever
Yeah,
in today's baseball.
I'm laughing because I have all my stuff sorted pretty nicely. I've got 2 boxes, 2 5-row boxes from 2005 of one box is just Topps products, and the other box is all other, Absolute, Playoff, whatever was around back then. But that shows you, and that's unique cards. Those are individual unique cards for sets. So there's probably out of there's dozens and dozens of sets just in 2005. So, the era didn't end, but I learned a lot about players when I buy collections. I learned a lot about players um, retroactively that played in that era and stuff like that. And there's hacks to figure out and to lessen your time in figuring out what is worth what. Now, difference between you and I is I collect every card. Okay, I collect. If I don't have it, it goes into my collection. So you and I are different in that respect. You're not looking to expand your collection.
I am looking to expand my collection for sure, but
For that
not.
era, like what would you look for in that era? I know you have, you got a lot of vintage cards, all that stuff, but what going into that were you hoping other than a Jeter SP or whatever? Those are money cards, but what were you
Yeah,
hoping to acquire?
I have pulled out probably 2,000 cards so far that I want for my collection, none of which are worth any money. They
Mhm.
are. I have a binder of Griffey cards in Mariners uniform. I was a huge
Okay.
Griffey fan as a kid, and I have must be 1,000 unique Griffey cards from the '90s plus '89, of course. I was looking for Pedro Martinez cards up
Right.
through 2004 because I have a
Okay.
binder of Pedro. I want to start a Nomar Garcia Parra binder, and I've pulled out hundreds and hundreds of Nomar cards. I'm trying to think of who else. Mo Vaughn in Red Sox uniform,
Okay.
stuff like that,
Right.
that I'm putting into binders. Now, are any of these worth any money? No, and I don't care.
Right.
And so I was hoping to find some good Topps traded cards. He had a ton of traded sets in there. The 82 Topps traded Ripken was out, was gone, had been pulled out years ago probably. But I did find like the Bonds and the Canseco and the Bow out of 86 and the Maddox out of 87 Fleer Glossy, stuff like
Right.
that
Yep.
I'll add to my collection, some of which I already had, but that's okay.
Do you
Trying to
think you got out of it what you want already as far as what you're going to keep? You've been through it, or you still have a ways to go?
I'm not done yet. I still have 3.5 big boxes to go through.
So what you need to, and I like I say, I buy these kind of collections not often enough, but I buy them often. Meaning, if I could buy one a week, I would. Um, I haven't bought one in a while, and it bothers the heck out of me because I want it. But there is a fine line between buying what everybody else has already gone through, right? And or buying
Right.
something like you have where there's still value in there, but you're not going to get rich, obviously, but there's still value in there.
I found a Pujols rookie Topps paper,
Okay. Right.
which I didn't have. I found a Ichiro also from the same set, which I did have. Uh, Stuff like that. I'm pulling out some Verlander rookies, some
Right. Well,
Scherzer
that's
rookies.
yeah. So that means that the thing. I mean, in spite of the Ripken not being in there, that's probably been gone for decades.
Right. He had not looked. I asked him, when was the last time somebody looked through this? And he said 2008 when his father
Right.
passed away.
Yeah. And they were his father's cards,
They were his
or
and
they
his
were his.
father's. They
Yeah.
collected
So
together.
that card might have been sold in 1990. You never know, right?
Right.
But
Exactly.
there's still stuff in there. There's meat on the bone, as they say. But you're asking how to, one thing you have to understand when you do these collections is, and this has been talked about a lot, but it doesn't get remembered a lot, is you're going to go through that. You have to do a couple laps. Okay. You have to take out what you want, right? And then you go through it again. Some people, for me, it's more difficult because I have smaller gaps in my collection than maybe you would with all those eras. So it takes me a little while to get through those cards. I have to sort them by manufacturer first, and then I have to sort them by year. And then, of course, they don't make it very easy to tell what year it is. So you got to kind of flip them over and do it that way as well. But anyway, it might take you a couple turns to get through there before you figure out, like, you got all your stuff out. Now you're trying to figure out what to sell, right? And you look at, say, I buy 50,000 cards for $500, which is kind of normal for me, right? That's a penny a card, right? So I log what I need out of my collection in there. So I still look at it as a penny a card. So even if you sell some of these cards on eBay for $1.59 or $1.82 or $1.99, you're talking about a penny, your cost of acquisition, right? You're going to clear on a $1.52 card. You'll probably clear 40 cents or 30 cents. It's still 30x. You're still 30xing if you clear 30 cents or 40 cents. You're 40xing. So you may feel like you have to keep up with the Joneses and sell $9 cards or $20 cards or $30 cards, but that's how I get rid of a lot of that. It's just sold a 1993 Upper Deck Nolan Ryan moments ago for $1.52. Okay,
So
that's a card I
then,
paid a penny for. I paid a penny for that card.
but I have to ask, is your time worth it?
Well, you went back, right? You talked about Chris Sewell, but you also talked about in your monologue about how you enjoy it.
Yes,
Okay.
but I don't enjoy the selling part. Do you enjoy the selling?
I sell duplicates, right? And I haven't listed in ages. And when I say ages, I'm talking about weeks and weeks and weeks and weeks, right? And there is an algorithm. The more you list, the more you sell, all that stuff. But I sell, cards, a couple cards a day. and I enjoy cards. I do enjoy sorting and going through them, and it's fun to sell them, but it's also that's how I make some of my money back. That's how I make money back so I can buy the next collection or the next card or whatever. And there's nothing enjoyable about that unless that's how you make your living. Most of us are collectors though, and we
Right.
enjoy the sorting and we enjoy the all that stuff, but that's just part of it. Now, I have other ways to get rid of cards and a lot quicker. I'll only pick out cards that I know are worth my time selling. I won't pick out 1988 Robin Yount's or 1989 Paul Molitor's because there's
Oh,
not a huge market for those.
okay. So
Okay.
let's talk about that because
Yeah.
this, I'll tell you what I did. It's a several step process, but let's go through this starting with that. The 88 Yount, 89 Molitor. I have created player lots,
Right.
let's say 400 Nolan Ryan cards from the 80s and 90s. Can I sell those as a lot like that for, I don't know, 40 bucks? I don't know. I don't know what the going rate is. Actually, I texted Chris Sewell and said, "What do I charge for player lots?" And he said we'd have a call sometime soon. Uh, but do you do player lots like that?
I don't, and I'll tell you why, because they are difficult to ship, right? So if you're, and I'm gonna, if you sold me 50 Robin Younts, yeah, that's what is that? An $8 package right there, $6 package. You're not gonna sell 50 or 100 Robin Younts for anything more than 15 or 20 bucks, I would imagine.
Okay.
So that's taking a big chunk of that. Nolan Ryan's a different deal. Nolan Ryan, I have probably 1,000 Nolan Ryan cards in my store, and they still sell. So he's kind of a different deal. But you have that, even a 1988 Mike Schmidt, 87 Mike Schmidt, nobody really cares about. He's the greatest third baseman in the world. But you have to understand what value is. Nobody your age grew up idolizing Mike Schmidt, but a lot of people your age knew who Nolan Ryan was at a very very early age. He was kind of the hero of the junk wax era,
Yep.
and you have to know what players sell. Fisk sells, right? Dave Winfield doesn't sell. Greg Maddux doesn't sell very very much. John Smoltz doesn't. There's players that sell and there's players that don't sell, and that's nobody's fault. That's not the player's fault, but you kind of have to get a nuance for what that is. And if you want to put player lots together, that's great, but I feel like a person who's interested in 50 Robin Yount cards probably has those 50 Robin Yount cards already, right? Nolan Ryan's a different story, but it just feels weird to me that somebody who's into Robin Yount would spend a lot of money on Robin Yount cards that are essentially worth a penny a pop. And I
Okay.
do, I have an advantage of I do look at Beckett OPG. Beckett OPG can tell me 1993 collector's choice what it doesn't tell me the accurate price of what they were, but it gives me the hierarchy of what is worth more in that set than other cards, right? I can so that when I'm looking for the cards, like say the 93 collector's choice upper deck set, I don't have them all. I'm looking where my holes are, but while I'm sorting, I'm also looking for the cards that may be worth more than your Paul Molitors or Dave Winfields and stuff like that. And then that's the ones I decide to set aside to put in my store. And I've got tens of thousands of cards that I haven't listed yet. And every now and then I go through them and figure out, up here's some more Nolan Ryans or Cal Ripkins or Carlton Fisks or whatever. Certain players sell, certain players don't. But it's tough because there are those nuances, and just like today, everybody expects every card to be worth X amount of dollars. It's not. It's
Are there
not
are
all
there
not all Hall of Famers are created equal. Just remember that, right?
right, of course. Are there rookie card collectors out there who will buy lots of rookie cards of any player?
Yeah. You know why? Because
So
there's still people out there that want to grade and they're looking for that difference between a 9 or a 10. I can't tell what that difference is between a 9 or a 10, but the
nobody can.
difference between a 9 and a 10 for a lot of these, even in the 80s and 90s, is substantial because there's probably millions of 8s and 9s out there, but how many 10s are there? And I've had people say to me in messages, "Hey, what will that thing grade at?" I don't care what it'll grade at. Here's the pictures. Here's a high res picture. This is the
Yeah.
card you're buying. I don't know what to tell you, but there's people out there hunting for,
Yeah.
you know, 89 Griffies and 90 Griffies and stuff like that in order for them to gem out, I guess.
But what about no-name players? What if you had a lot of, uh, let's say, from CC Sabathia rookies, not a huge star, but probably a Hall of Famer,
It's gonna be a Hall of Famer. Yeah.
right? Chipper Jones rookies. These are zero value rookies to, I don't know, some no-name guy who never made it. Is there any
Well,
value in
I'll give you
bucketing
an example.
2,000 of those together?
I mean, do you have 2,000? Oh, you're talking about 2,000 individual ones.
2,000
Okay.
individual rookie card, prospect cards, at
You know
least
what's a guy
easily.
who sells that you wouldn't expect? Well, maybe you do expect is the Trot Nixon rookie, right? I mean, he's one of those guys that I would.
I love Trot.
Yeah, I mean, people like mooks like you still buy that stuff, whatever that is. I guess it's an upper deck, his upper deck rookie card.
Yeah.
You know, it's again, it's a nuance, and who knows? Who knows? I have, like I said, I collect first, so therefore it goes into my collection. I sort out players I know that sell. You know, Ozzie Smith, hard to sell some Ozzie Smith stuff unless it's like a little bit odd. But Brett, you know, all those guys, I have 10,000 cards on my eBay store right now. But I won't go to the trouble, like I said, to pull out the Winfields, and no offense to you, but the Jack Morrises and all those guys. Like they'll go off to the side, and I have a hack for that as well.
What is it?
So, well, you gotta. It's who you know. I trade. Tell you, if I buy 50,000 cards for $500, a penny a pop, essentially, and then cards go into my collection, and my collection increases in X amount. Usually, I sell off other cards that will pay back that $500 at least, and then I have tens of thousands of other cards left over. I get a penny a pop, trading them into an LCS for store credit.
For commons, junk wax commons?
Yes, the answer to that is yes. So
I
I
would
get a
drive to
return on I
Philadelphia.
get a return on, well, it's not Philadelphia, by the way. Uh, yeah, I get a return on my investment, a 1-to-1 in theory return on my investment. Sorry, I'm ordering dinner. And
Dinner's more important.
in store credit, right? And I've gone up there. I'm not going to tell you where it is, but I've gone to that store and I've done well there and gotten 64 Tops Giants and stuff like that in return. You know, it's like there's ways to liquidate these cards without going to too much trouble. If you're going to sell Bob Hamlin on your store, man, you're going to wait a long time to get your money back on Bob Hamlin.
I'm not
Okay.
selling Bob. I would have sold that card because that's a
Exactly. But what I'm
$15
saying is
card.
it's like not, you know, even though I like to say I paid equal value or the equal amount for each card, they're not all the same because some cards going into my boxes, some cards going into my eBay store, but the vast majority, probably 8 or 9 out of 10, probably, you know, on a good day, eight cards out of 10 will be trade-ins, and I will have gotten a lot of cards in my collection in return. But most of those cards get sent back. I've traded in 200,000 cards. I went one time, I traded in 125,000 cards for a store credit. Okay. I went up to the shop. It's a long way away from me. I went up to the shop. It was actually closed a couple of weeks ago. I had another 40,000 cards. And on the way back, I stopped at my LCS, and he was doing this drive for kids where they were doing, you know, whatever, packaging up cards for kids to give away. And I just put 20,000 cards in his shop. Now, not every LCS wants that, of course, because they probably have too many of them, but there's ways to make those cards useful. I hate throwing cards out. There's people that will throw cards out. And the fact
I
that
had
you're
a lot
even,
of people in
they
my
sell you that
newsletter.
to you? Yeah.
Well, I asked on my video a couple weeks ago. A lot of people said throw them away. A lot of people said recycle them. And in my newsletter this week, I told people what I'm doing, which is taking them to the dump because the guy who runs the dump hands them out to little kids. He was actually
Oh,
giddy
there
when
you
I
go.
said, "What do
Right.
I do with thousands of worthless baseball cards. They're financially worthless baseball
Right.
cards.
Yeah.
What do I do with them? And he's like, oh, bring them here to me in a box. I give them to kids. I love it. And I said, perfect. So now I just bring them in. I put them in the garage, and he takes care of it, which is a fantastic solution to me.
Yeah, I have a hard time, and maybe other people are the same way from my era. Like we had our cards thrown away. I didn't, but my brother's cards were thrown away. So the premise of throwing cards away is it hurts. It still hurts. It's still too soon, but that's a great example. But part of me wrestles with when I go on Facebook Marketplace. Part of me wrestles with like, if I bought all these crappy cards for $50 at a pop each time, then I could take them out of circulation and throw them away and all that stuff. But I have a feeling that that is a fruitless effort because you'll never get them all out of circulation. But it just it just seems like they never end. They just keep coming at you. These
Yeah.
cards, they're everywhere, and of course, everybody wants money for them, and everybody says they're vintage and all that stuff. But man, it it's an amazing phenomenon, the junk wax era, and it continues on 30 plus years. It's still going strong, and it's still everywhere. But I'm different than you. I want every card, so I will take every card I can get, and then either off the eBay in my collection, off the eBay, or other means, and that's usually getting them for a store credit.
That's
Have you
awesome.
explored that? Have you talked to your LCSs about that?
I haven't. I'm going in there next week, so I'll ask him.
Because there's things that, and I've toyed with this. I've promoted a card show, and of course, there's a million card shows or a lot of card shows near. I've toyed with setting up, but that's a bridge too far for me because a lot of those cards that you have are quarter cards or 50-cent cards. Your Frank Thomases from the early '90s or whatever. So you could make money off of that if you set up, but you got to lug the stuff around. You got to spend time at a card show and all that stuff. Is you really want to make it a quarter of time on your feet? My thing is my cards are back there in a wall behind the wall, and when somebody buys them, they buy them, and there's no after listing them whether they're on for a month or 2 years. It doesn't matter to me. They're not perishables. They're there. Somebody buys Nolan Ryan for $1.82, they buy $1.82 Nolan Ryan. I'm not doing any work at this point. But you have to go heavy. If you go to eBay and want to do that, it's a commitment. You
Yeah.
have to start it up, and you have to build your inventory.
Well, let's wrap this up. Any last words of wisdom from you?
Oh, well, I would love for you to be a set collector, but you're not. And then you wouldn't have this dilemma. You'd be getting rid of, you know,
I
30,000 cards or 20,000 cards at this point.
I did decide to collect the 93 Topps Finest non-refractor set because of this collection.
Okay.
Because I
And
came with
you
20-ish cards
All right.
from the set, and I was like, oh man, I should collect this set. So I'm getting a binder for that.
See, the good part is, like I said, when I buy a collection, I can look at, like, if I buy 50,000 cards, $500, I can probably see not a realized, but a theoretical $5,000 bump in the value of my collection, right? Just by according to Beckett OPG, which is nonsense, but I realize a return there. I realize a return when I pay it off via eBay, but what what I really realize is how much I enjoy looking at cards and learning about cards and then learning about a player and all that stuff. So the cards are there to not think of, to me, they're not there to think of how much money I can make or whatever. They're there. It's a journey when I'm sorting these cards to learn about things, or I didn't know that set was there, or I didn't know this guy played for that team. So, we talk about, is it worth it? It's worth it because we're getting educated, we're having fun, and you're not in a bar, right? You're not spending money at a casino. You're in your garage or you're in your basement sorting cards, and
Right.
and it's busy
For
work, but it's harmless.
Yeah, for me, it's the shipping them off that isn't worth my time. That I really don't enjoy the printing off a label,
Right.
loading an envelope, and
Right.
and shipping it. That's the part that just I can't. If and certainly not for $1.49. It's just not in me. But
Yeah.
for me, advice to somebody who's thinking about buying a junk wax collection, you have to love it. you have to love the going through it for dozens and dozens of hours because it's a lot of work. And I happen to love this. You love this, but I don't think a lot of people nowadays would. I
A
have enjoyed
collection
going
that
through it.
size takes me months, Mike. 100,000 cards takes me 2 or 3 months,
Right,
you
because
know?
you're listing it in your eBay store, you're adding it to your
Well,
Beckett
more importantly,
OPG.
adding it to my collection. Yeah, I mean, that
Yeah,
takes time, and there are people like Chris Sewell that will go through cards
yeah,
and know, and they know what to do with the
yeah,
rest. But he's also getting cards from a different era, which is different than what you're doing, you know?
yeah. My wife has been extremely patient with me because I have cards everywhere. I have cards all over my desk here and a desk that's next to me here. They're
Mhm.
still in the garage. I have 4 boxes still in the garage, and I have cards and boxes upstairs in our living room, and I'm constantly sitting on the couch with her going through cards.
You're telling me your wife's patient with you? This is a third of my room here. But listen, this is a rule. This is a rule I follow that this is what you should implement immediately. Okay. I don't, this is my basement. It's my card cave, whatever you want to call it. But I very rarely do I take this elsewhere into the house. So I urge you to try to consolidate as much as you can. That doesn't mean you have to go through the whole thing, but that also means you don't have to go through the whole thing right now. Just like take your time going through it because again, these things aren't perishable. They've been around for 30 plus years. They're not going anywhere. But don't leave them around the house because my wife rarely sees baseball cards unless she comes down here. I would suggest
Yeah,
that it hasn't been a source of friction in my marriage, but I don't want it to be. So I keep it like I keep the
yeah,
stuff away, you know?
yeah. I do too, except now because it's better that I'm upstairs doing it with her
Right.
rather than sitting down here by myself and she's
Well,
upstairs by
yeah,
herself.
I'll take a box up, and while she's watching the show, I'll sit at the kitchen table and I'll sort. But at the end of the night, my rule is everything goes back.
Gotcha.
So,
Yeah,
yeah, it's again, you feel like you need to. The problem with us being men, for the most part, is we're impulse puppies, and we want to get through it all as fast as possible. And I get it, but it's like I've learned I've learned to enjoy the journey a little bit more with my collections when I buy them. You know, not to rush through them because I could process a collection like that if I wanted to, but I've gotten better at taking my time, I guess. Tantric card sorting is what I like to call it. But yeah, just take your time, man. Do it. Mate, that's how you unwind. That's your
yep,
therapy. That's all that
yep,
stuff, man. You know, we get
exactly.
excited, but it's also the thing that calms us. So just enjoy that. Enjoy the journey. And if you live closer, I would be taking all those extra cards off your hand. I guarantee you.
Yeah,
You would have doubled
yeah.
your money if I had been there, man.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, John, and everybody, let us know in comments what you think about any of these items. And if you ever buy collections, what do you do with the cards?
Are we supposed to play the video at the end? I haven't been on this show in a long time.
I
Or are
don't
we
think
just
there's a
supposed
video
to
at
say
the end.
goodbye? Okay. All right. See you,
Bye.
everybody. Bye. I should probably end the recording now too, right? There we go.